Hi, Jack. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Pleased to meet you, Jack.
Ali and I were just chatting this afternoon. We feel like we know you already because we've been watching, videos and reading the book and things like that about some of your story. But if it's all right, we thought we might fire a few questions at you about some of it.
No problem. Go right ahead.
You wrote me an email where you said I've had 6 careers. You're in your 6th career.
Yeah.
Right. So
I'm not exaggerating. So you want to hear him? So I was a college professor when I was recruited by the KGB. So I was already teaching math and chemistry. So then I became a spy. My first job, you can't call it a career, but it was a particularly different job. My first job in the United States, I was a bike messenger, number 3. For 2.5 years, I did that full time. Then I became a computer programmer. Then I became a manager slash executive. I went all the way to chief information officer at a very large electric energy company. And now I'm a writer and a speaker. And I may become a producer, an active producer of my own miniseries. That would be number 7, but I'm not counting it yet. And the thing is that, and the next question is, how did you, how did you think that will work? Because I just knew, you have to get in with a positive attitude. For instance, that speaker thing. Oh my God. When I was interviewed by 60 Minutes, the last company I was employed by was very uncomfortable having me around because they were a company that manages the electric grid of a certain state in the Northeast, and it was embarrassing to them to have in their ranks an ex-KGB spy, right? So we parted company, and I said to my wife and my daughter, I said, "Well, I'm just going to do some public speaking." I was not very good at this, but I'm like a pit bull. When I decide to do something, I'm all in. So I kept on going, and within a year, I got quite good. And nowadays, you can put me in front of 10,000 people without props, and I can speak for an hour, 2 hours. It's because my favorite saying in this respect is, practice makes better, doesn't make perfect. I'm not the best speaker there is, but I'm never rehearsed. If I were rehearsed, people would notice, and the authenticity would run out of the room. So that's how that's how it worked. 6 of them, and the interesting thing is what I'm doing now is what I actually have the most talent for. Growing up in East Germany, we were strongly directed into science. Science was it. I was good enough, but I would have never been a really, really good scientist. I was just pretty much good at everything that I touched because, as I said before, one of the secrets is, don't be afraid of new. The other one is you got to be all in. You can't just play around. You've got to be committed, or else it's not going to work.
I was going to ask you about you being a person who's tremendously experienced in intense periods of training and learning. You speak about that in your podcast with Lex Fridman about learning English and the process that you followed. So what for you are the key skills or processes to learn new things to a deep level?
Okay, so learning, there's 2 types of learning. One of them is, there's logic involved. You can, derive your answer based on a number of starting facts because you know the methodology, you know the process. That requires a little bit of brain power. This is not everybody is capable of being very logical, but there's a lot of stuff that I learned that cannot be logically derived. We're talking about the English language. We're talking about a lot of chemistry. The formula of cocaine is the formula of cocaine. You can't, you want to derive it. It doesn't work. and you know, fundamentally also my speaking. So this requires a lot of discipline. And I in chemistry, I was, you know, there were about 60 students, and they were all elite. They were handpicked. They uh, they were just the best of the best, and I beat them by a lot. Why? Because I had developed a study method that that allowed me to know exactly what I know. Okay, so this is what I did. I would never study from a textbook. Like, people underline stuff that doesn't sink in. So I would transcribe things from the lectures and the textbooks into sort of paragraphs. And just before one of those big exams, I would go through my notes and write down questions, the answer of which are in the notes. So now, as I studied, I would go through the questions, try to answer them, and check if I had the answer right. If I had it right, I'd get a check mark. If not, no check mark. So second run, I would only look at the ones that I got wrong or I forgot. And all the way until I had them all right. And then I went through them one more time to make sure that I hadn't forgotten some of them. So exam time, I knew exactly what I knew, and I had a talent to figure out what is most likely going to be on the exam. And I was not nervous, because, you know, it was like, okay, so here it is, I'm prepared, throw it at me. And over time, when you have success with that method, you become really, really self-confident. I One of the last exams that we had, a written exam in subject was called modern methods of measuring, some rough translation. It's a lot. There was a lot of different little things to that were covered. I got an A. The second best grade was a C, and it's not because I was the smartest, because I had the right method and I had the discipline. And so when I learned English, I did it somewhat similarly, but I had index card. So one side is German, one side is English. So and I added 100 cards to that pile every day, and because my idol, my hero was Vladimir Lenin, and I read that when he was in exile, he studied German and he learned 100 words a day. So I figured, he can do it, I can do it. So, and it's pretty much the same way, you know, I go through in the morning. I was very often watching the German version of Sesame Street while I was doing this. And I go, German, okay, what's the English? Okay, good, goes over here. Uh, uh, don't remember, stays here. So over here is now tier 2, and that went all the way to tier 5. And so in other words, I had, in order for a particular word or phrase to be in tier 5, I had to get it right 5 times consecutively. And after tier 5, if I still knew it, I threw it in the archive. And occasionally, every 3-4 months, I would bring the archive back into the pile to make sure that I hadn't forgotten anything. With that method, I acquired a vocabulary that was significantly stronger than most native speakers, but that was also dangerous, because, as you probably know, the English language has a lot of synonyms, and there's one. If you learn the language by yourself the way I did it, you don't know which one to use. So even years into my existence in the United States, people would tell me, "You have a interesting way of speaking," because I would use some words that are, you know, second or third in the line of preference. That nowadays it doesn't happen anymore. I've been here long enough, and you know, I speak you know, colloquial American English, and I can speak pretty high level educated English. But that's how I succeeded uh, in studying stuff. It just takes a lot of discipline and determination. And I remember high school, college, before every exam, the girls were all like, "Oh, I don't even know. I have no idea. I'm so nervous." Well, I wasn't because because I was prepared.
Jack, on that, I got a couple of questions on that quickly, but the first one would be on the synonyms thing. You mentioned that could be a bit of a telltale sign if you chose the wrong
Oh, yeah.
one. I also read somewhere that when you used to watch the FIFA World Cup, you didn't want to get too engaged with it in case that betrayed your European heritage. Is that true?
Oh,
And
oh
so what you
yeah,
enjoyed
oh
the
yeah,
World Cup more?
oh yeah. One way to unmask me as not an American is first of all put a baseball bat in my hands and ask me to swing for the ball. That would look real ugly. And then you put a soccer ball in front of my right foot and ask me not to kick it. I can't help it. This is in my blood. You know, this is what we played as soon as we could run and had a ball, because it doesn't take anything else. And I have to admit, I'm not watching television these days, but today is the semifinal. After this interview, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to sit in front of that monitor and watch every second of it. This is something you just don't get out of your blood. And say watching a soccer match with others, with Americans, uh, that if people are really sharp and pay attention, they would have figured out something is a little odd about this guy. The same way, if I ever had uh, extended contact with a linguist, they would have figured out that I'm not a native speaker. Regardless of my explanation of, I still have a bit of an accent. But when people ask me, so what about that accent? The easy answer was that Jack Barsky's mother's maiden name was Schwartz. So that's can be a German name. It's most likely Jewish, but it can also be just, a German. And so in my backstory, we killed off my father at the age of 2 and made me grow up bilingual, and that was a perfectly acceptable explanation. And I used it maybe once or twice.
So on that training side, Jack, where about you were saying there about you only know what you know, and that preparedness, that obviously was something that you had with you from quite a young age, and that you didn't necessarily need to get trained. But I wanted to ask you about training for what you used to call execution mode, which is where you train your brain to be
Yeah.
calm to the point of total numbness. Is that right?
Yes, that's not training. See, there's a lot of things that people thought the KGB trained me in. Not at all. I never spoke to a psychologist in the KGB. I never got any training how to, say, manipulate people, how to, make people like you. Uh, None of that. As a matter of fact, the only thing that I got was one of the agents came back from the United States and through Carnegie's book, how to make friends and influence people, or something like that. Very valuable book, but there was no training. And with regard to execution mode, uh, I am borderline probably ADHD. I'm easily distracted, but I also know when it's important to focus. And as execution mode was like any kind of garbage that was in my head, I put aside, and I didn't think about anything but what was to come next. In addition, I also, in my mind, repeated the information that I took with me, which was a lot of disconnected facts like meeting places, frequencies, and on and on, and also code words. And we're talking about meeting places in different countries and times and spots for where we would deposit an object for dead drop operation and stuff like that. But that execution mode was only focused on what comes next and making sure that my brain retains everything that I was supposed to take with me. That wasn't taught, and so So at that point, I had no feelings. I had no feelings of regret because I was, I had betrayed my family because I lied to them and my German wife. I didn't lie to her. So she knew what was going on, but nevertheless, there could be a lot of sadness coming in because I really loved that woman. I didn't let that in, and there wasn't any joy either. It was just like I turned into sort of a robot-like creature who just did what he had to do to get through. And it was primarily during travels and when we conducted operations, like when I met other agents in third countries, meetings and dead drop operations, uh, that they were subject to the same focus. And that way, I think I managed to avoid a lot of mistakes that are easy to make when you are at least partially emotional, particularly fear. You cannot imagine, you should not imagine, what if, uh, that you thought about ahead of time, and but before you even start the operation, you think about all the what ifs, and you figure out what to do if, but not while you're operating. Not all the clutter is out. It's just focus what to do next.